What I'm really looking for is financial time and location independence together.
Never do that. It will decimate you if it doesn't work out.
We can recapitalize, but we don't have to sell them.
What's up, Clint? It's good to have you on, brother.
Thanks, man. Good to be here. I've been looking forward to this one.
Me too. You and I, we actually got our professional starts, I would say, in similar industries, didn't we?
Yep, sure enough, man. It's nice to talk to somebody that knows the lifestyle. Medical
Yeah.
sales, carrying the bag. You're in the operating room doing surgery. We were slinging it, man. Sounds like we both did it for a long time. I was in it for 16 years.
Yeah, man. I was in for 18 years and you did pacemakers, right?
Yeah, medical sales. So, again, in sales, every month you start over at zero, but mine was a little bit different in that once I put a pacemaker or defibrillator in somebody, that was my patient for life. And I would see them, I had clinic days where I was just checking patients in the office and maintaining their device and seeing if they had any arrhythmias or anything like that. And then some days were all surgery days. And usually it was a combination of the two. And once you put a device in somebody, if they ever go to the emergency room or have an irregular rhythm or their device shocks them and they go to the ER, somebody's on call for that 24/7, right? Driving 2 or 3 hours in any direction, 2 or 3 in the morning. So the more success you have and build a territory, the more responsibility you have from a patient care standpoint.
How often would you get calls like in the middle of the night and have to go somewhere?
If I was on call a week at a time, I would get called 3 or 4 nights during the middle of the week. And usually Saturday morning, I'm running around to 2, 3, 4 hospitals checking the patients I did surgery on Friday, because you have to do a discharge the next morning. And then usually called another 2 or 3 times during the rest of that Saturday and Sunday. So very, very labor intensive.
Oh man. I thought orthopedics was demanding. That is next level
Dude,
demanding. But then
elective procedure is where it's at. Elective procedures with no call. That's what you want.
well, one of the cases I did was kyphoplasty and vertebroplasty. And so like that, and for those of you guys who don't know, that's in the spine for compression fractures. And that was, I wouldn't say it was somewhat elective. They had to choose to get that procedure done. It wasn't like they had to, otherwise they'd be in a ton of pain if they didn't. But all my cases were scheduled between like 7 a.m. to 4, right? So I didn't have to the weekend. I had friends who did that. That's a hard life. It's not easy, especially when you're like looking at your kids on Saturday morning and that you're supposed to go somewhere and they just don't understand. Like I had a good, really a fantastic coworker of mine who was in orthopedics and kind of had a very similar call schedule. And he's like, dude, you don't know how many times I had the dirt bikes on the trailer ready to leave. And I'd have to go get my company car, leave the dirt bikes on the trailer and tell my kids, I'll try to make it home in time for us to go dirt bike riding today. And he's like, on most days, they knew that I was gone for the rest of Saturday and that wouldn't happen. He was like, it killed me. But how did this impact your family, like working like that?
So I did this before I had kids. So my wife and I were married for 7 years before we started a family, and I'd been doing pacemakers for long before that. So it's hard, right? It's a lifestyle, and you pick your battles. I'm sure you probably had to show up the day before procedures and probably had to go back the day after a lot of times, right? So you pick your battles, but some of the continuity there is that ultimately you're still trading time for money. That occupation has a pretty high ceiling, but that ceiling either has to be enough for you and what you want out of your life for your family, or else you have to make a change. And that high ceiling can create those golden handcuffs that's hard to walk away from. So
Mm.
I saw the writing on the wall that this is a young man's game. I liked it. I love the hustle, and I was blessed to be pretty good at it. But eventually, I knew that I wanted to do something else. And I think the ability for most people in our generation to save our way to retirement, I think it's gotten harder and harder and largely has been taken away from us. So that means if I couldn't play defense and get there, in order to get my time and my life back, I had to play offense. And so we started a journey of investing in real estate. And luckily, I had my I had my first child, and he was born, and that day I ran to the other end of the hospital and I did 3 procedures and was running back and forth. When my wife was pregnant with our second, I made the switch to full-time real estate investor. And the way that I've been able to be present during his birth, he's 18 months old now, wildly different, right? And that point is what we were working towards, to where we break the cycle of trading time for money and have a life of what I call freedom of purpose is what we're steering for.
Yeah, and I know your big thing is it's not necessarily financial freedom is one thing, but it's freedom of purpose. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I got to this point because I did a couple things wrong. We started investing in real estate. We did a handful of flips with marginal success. We had 9 single family homes before I realized it's a really slow way to get ahead. We moved to Wilmington, North Carolina in 2017 and started buying small multifamily properties and converting them to Airbnbs because they have this really great potential for rental income. And I actually replaced my job. I was still working. I replaced my job as a medical sales rep, but at what cost, right? I understood that what I did is I was focused just on the cash flow and on the financial side of things, but I still was locked into one location, especially during the summertime. I still had my phone on me, and I was basically on call even when I wasn't on call with my company, right? And that's when I realized the marketing term of financial independence and even the FIRE movement, in my opinion, like I think it's a really shallow goal. No offense to anybody in your strategy, but for what I want out of my life, what I'm really looking for is financial, time, and location independence together. Those 3 components create what I've come to call independence of purpose, right? That means you're going where you want, when you want, and do what you want. If let's say we all had a freedom of purpose and like you don't have to worry about money anymore, you're not tied to a location and you can spend your time how you want. What does the rest of your life look like? And that will look differently for everyone. But if you have kids and you're a dad, I would hazard to say that that is or should be probably one of your top, motivations as to how can I do the best that I can in that job with the time that I have left on earth, because that's the driving decision of my freedom of purpose, is that I get to make that the most important thing for me. And for some person, maybe it's construction or church or charity or, being a bum and laying on the beach or whatever it may be. That's going to look differently for everybody. But getting to the point where you have the ability to make that decision for your life and the people that you love, that's the goal that's so much bigger than just money.
And how did you start with this? I mean, many of us I think were really really terrified to start anything like this. But I'm looking at your situation, which was kind of similar to mine, which was I think people in the outside world were like, why are you building something additional? Like this is somebody's dream job. And a lot like, you use the term golden handcuffs and I did too. Like a lot of people didn't see that grind and what you were sacrificing. Yes, the paycheck was great, but I'll be honest, man, I was never more miserable in my life than when I was in executive level management, being the national director of sales for one of our divisions in medical devices. Cause I was on a plane, you know, I was out of town Monday through Friday. I was on a plane every single Sunday night or Monday morning. I would miss games, practices, birthdays, anniversaries. I think my wife and I have been married for 21 years. It was always, for some reason, our national sales meeting always fell on our anniversary. I think out of 21 years, we have spent maybe 6 or 7 of them together on the actual day because of that. And that's a huge sacrifice of, when you're pulled away, when you're pulled away from your family and you don't get to see your kids on their birthday or things like that, or you're having to go to an emergency case when your kids are waiting for you to go take them on a hike. That sucks. It really, really does suck. And again, yes, the financial aspect was great, but everything else was kind of a dump. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. But did people start to question you of like, dude, like you're killing it? Like, so why would you even want to get into real estate?
Yeah, of course, especially when they're, smaller single family properties and things like that. But I've always had this an entrepreneurial drive to try to create things out of nothing. I love that process. And I'm hungry to learn. I've, the same fire in the belly and motivation that you have to have success in medical sales, where, you're getting up every day and you're walking into enemy territory until one day it doesn't feel like enemy territory anymore. And you've got relationships and these are your people, right? And that's your tribe. Like that same motivation to have success in that world is something that I carry with me. I'm a natural extrovert. I love learning new things and I want to be part of it. And what I know is, yeah, medical sales can have a pretty high ceiling. Um, if that ceiling, you can calculate it, right? Ultimately, you're trading time for money. If you're trading time for money, it's just a word problem. You can have a realistic expectation of, so what's your ceiling going to be? I mean, the cost of pacemakers is coming down and down. They're lasting longer and longer and longer, so you don't replace them as often. You can see where the industry's going, and then I can do the calculation as to what my ceiling is. If that ceiling, however financially secure it may look to other people, if that ceiling is not high enough for what I want for my family, then you're asking me, why would I go do something else? The real risk is not doing something else, right? I can see where I'm going. You can put together the roadmap. If you work backwards from there, and if that is not high enough for what you want in life, your only real risk is not doing something differently, right? And the longer you wait, the less time you get to build that off ramp. So we started down that path, and I was blessed to, marry someone that we're in it together. It's a partnership, and we both want to do some big audacious things with our lives, and that doesn't get handed out anymore, right? We have to learn to create that value ourselves. And I know that as we get older, the thing that we have less of than anything else is time. And by definition, that becomes worth more to us at any point in time. So if I know that later on in my life, my time is going to be more valuable than anything else, then I need to start investing in something now that is going to grow into something that gives me time independence. And that also needs to come with location independence. And that needs to come with financial independence. That, if I know that's my destination, it picks the path for me. And for me, that's real estate, and specifically eventually turn into syndication and self-storage.
I like that. How many properties do you own now?
We have 14 Airbnb properties. We have one long-term rental. I was at the point of getting ready to liquidate some of those properties. I have two quadplexes I'm going to be selling. And then I have another quadplex and a duplex and a long-term property they're on a 30-year note, but I set them to pay off when my oldest turns 16. So that I should have, one of the quadplexes right now is worth around 800. So let's say by then, maybe it's, I don't know, 900 or million. My idea is that I can do a cash out refinance without stressing the property. It'll still cash flow as a multifamily at the beach, but that would give me the money I need, 70% loan to value, whatever that number is, 600 or 700 tax free to pay for my boys' education. So I'm using that just because those are a vehicle to help pay for their education. Outside of that, my partners and I, in the end of 2020, we bought an old Kmart building. We converted that shell to a climate controlled self-storage facility. Um, there's a story there. That's really what moved the needle for us financially and changed things in a big way. After that, we did a couple more. That started the process of me leaving the medical industry. And over the last 3.5 years, we bought 2 Kmarts, 3 warehouses, 2 textile mills, an old Piggly Wiggly grocery store, a soda bottling facility. We converted all those to climate controlled self-storage. We have a carpet factory and a boot factory under renovation right now, opening up in the next couple months. And we have 2 more under contract, not counting the 2 that are under construction right now. We're at $150 million worth of assets under management. We've got a 2-year goal to get to 300 million, 5-year goal to get to 500 million, and a 10-year goal to get to $1 billion. So that's
Wow.
the journey that we're on.
How old are you?
I'm 41. I'll be 42 next week.
So by the time you're 52 years old, or are we already several years into this goal?
We started 3.5 years ago. Yeah. So it's probably going to take us another 8. It's, how things grow, like it's exponential growth, right? It's never linear. You think you're marching along, but a lot of times, like in a 10-year goal, a lot of the growth might happen in years 7 through 10, right? Because
Right.
you've doubled and tripled the size of the systems and the acquisition and capital raising and everything else. But we are, we're clipping along. We're doing very well. The group is, it's me. I've got 3 general partners. We have 16 employees. The group is called Nomad Capital because a nomad goes where they want, when they want, and does what they want, right? So
I like that.
we picked storage because it's very easy to manage. We picked conversions because we bought our first Kmart for 1.5 million because nobody wants a 100,000 square foot big box retail building anymore. That space is dead. So we can buy it for dirt cheap. The replacement cost just to build that shell would have been 6.5 million. You know how it is when you flip a property, you don't make your money when you sell it or renovate it. You made your money when it smelled like dogs and cats and you bought it for dirt cheap. So we buy old vacant buildings that nobody wants that have been typically sitting empty for 8 to 12 years. We buy them for pennies on the dollar. We do the construction ourselves. I raise the capital in-house from our investor pool, and then we manage in-house under the brand name of City Storage. And because of that, if you and I built a self-storage, it would cost us $120 a square foot plus the cost of the land and take 3 years. On average, all those properties I told you about for the purchase of the building, the construction, the land, everything, it takes us 12 months from the time we buy it till the day it's open. And including all those costs, our average price, including the land, is just under $65 a square foot. So we do it for about half the cost of development in about a third of the time by converting an old building instead of building a new one. That means that when we stabilize it, I'm jumping straight into the weeds, man. We have a lot bigger things to talk about than just money, but the idea is we're buying a building for 1 to 2 million. We put 2 to 3 million into it. As a self-storage, it typically appraises in the 13 to 15 million range. We can do a cash out refinance, fixed rate long-term debt at say 60% loan to value, pay ourselves and all the investors, which means it's non-taxable because it's not a capital gain because we didn't sell anything. And then we hold it long-term. Everybody stays in. That's what breaks the cycle of trading time for money, right? If we're just building things up, we make them nice, and then we have to sell them for everybody to get a payday. I'm a glorified house flipper. And just like you used to start over every month at zero and you have a quota to hit, same thing. The day we stop working is the day we stop getting paid. This is so much more important than money. You are trying to break the chain of trading time for money and me giving up my life paying for somebody else's days off. That doesn't work for the freedom of purpose I want for my life. So that's forced appreciation through the conversion, recapitalization through refinance, keep them, and then dictate what the rest of our lives look like. And you know, I think I told you this before we started talking. It's like my goal is to stuff's not going to make anybody happy. Money does create options and it's important, but my job is to die with a big stack of pictures of cool things I did with my family in beautiful places with people that I care about. Right? That's it. I mean, it's not going to be long. We're all gone, and 100 years after that, everybody said our name for the last time, right? Time is a very limited resource, and how much of your life do you want to trade away paying for somebody else's days off?
That is so true. How did you? So first of all, I've never heard. I tinker with real estate, so I've got some assets in real estate and partner with a few people on multifamily deals and that kind of thing. Capital raises. I don't do the capital raises myself, but I'm part of them in some way, shape, or form. I'm so curious as to you know how did you know anything about this before you got into real estate?
No, not at all. I didn't know anything about self-storage. In fact, I got so burned out with Airbnb, I couldn't find a management company that could manage my listings for me. So my wife and I spent 2 years building a property management company with some partners. And by the end of that process, I hired myself out of the company. I have partners that are significantly better operators than I am. When I backed out, the company actually thrived, but we still own that as well. Excuse me. And at that point, I just had to get really honest with myself and be like, listen, I'm not a great operator. I can be if I want to be, but like I'm burned out on tenants. Airbnb have 8 to 10 tenants a month in every unit. So I was like, what are all the really intelligent people doing that have the life that I'm looking for in real estate? So I found a bunch of those people that were a lot farther along in their journey and worked backwards. And the three things that kept coming up were hard money lending and note lending. I didn't have the $1 million it took to get started in there. It was mobile home parks. I was already burnt out on tenants. I had no interest in that, or it was self-storage. And I said, okay, wait a minute. Self-storage. Let me get this straight. You're renting someone a box of air and there's no kitchens, there's no bathrooms, and there's no tenants living in the property, as long as you're doing it right, right? So I was like, man, this sounds great. So I started the aggressive pursuit of learning about storage. And then I met my partners through a local meetup, and I learned about this concept that they had done a conversion project in 2016, small warehouse on a fairly small scale. And it jumped off the page at me because my experience of buying small quadplexes with bad long-term month-to-month tenants in them moving those tenants out, converting that property to an Airbnb with 3 to 4x the gross rents. And that drastically pushes up the value of the property, right? And I looked at it, I was like, holy smokes, they're doing the same thing I'm doing. They're just doing it on a bigger scale, right? So self-storage is great. Syndication is the vehicle to scale. You're raising money from a pool of people so that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You know, you roll it together and a bunch of people can take on projects significantly larger what one individual could do on their own. So that's the vehicle to do it. And then the rinse and repeat process is the conversion process, adaptive reuse, right? Finding something in society that nobody wants anymore, like an old Kmart. There used to be 2,000 of them, great residential density. A lot of times that community is kind of formed around that location. Great visibility, great traffic count, unbelievable number of people living in a 1, 3, 5, and 7 mile radius. Here's what's happened in our society. All those people in that town used to drive back to that location to get their home goods. They don't do that anymore because of Walmart and Amazon, but it makes it a great location for those same people to drive back to the same building and pay us to sometimes put the same stuff right back inside of it, right? So it's this little inverse flow of this micro economy. And because of the conversion aspect, which I was already doing with Airbnbs, that's what creates enough value that we don't have to sell them when we're done to move on. That's the key, right? I'll tell you a cool story. So my partners are a father and son team of Eric and Levi Hemingway. Eric was a home builder, then built his first self-storage in 2006. Market crashed in 08, right? He's a home builder. Nobody's building anything. So Eric and his wife, Rachel, and their 5 kids bought a 36-foot catamaran in Greece, sight unseen. And they're like, we're going to go sailing for a little bit and wait for the economy to turn. 6 months in, economy hasn't turned. They found out they're pregnant with their 6th kid, didn't want to stop, kept sailing, stopped and had their 6th kid in Jerusalem, sailed for a total of 3.5 years, sailed across the Mediterranean to Africa, and then sailed across the Atlantic and landed in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we are, and then got back to building. Incredible people and just an unbelievable influence on me. But that boat trip was the spark of the idea of Nomad Capital, right? We can go where we want, when we want, and do what we want because we have a commercial asset that's very easy to manage, that's inflation resistant because everybody's on a month-to-month lease, that will allow us to live a nomadic lifestyle. And then it was a series of years of learning, like, how do we take this concept and build it out into creating a tribe of people that all have the opportunity to live a nomadic lifestyle if that's what you choose. Because we built these portfolio of assets together, we can recapitalize, but we don't have to sell them. And that, the idea of Nomad Capital is, in my personal life, what I call, that's the freedom of purpose that we're all really looking for, right? Your only other option is to try to make so much money in your life that you can save enough that one day you can stop working. Man, that model is getting really hard to do these days.
I actually read where people, if they're trying to save their way to retirement, like you said, it's becoming actually impossible to actually save enough because time is not on our side. And
inflation's not either.
inflation, yeah, all these things that are really impacting us. As far as real estate goes, for someone who has no experience with this, but they're really liking what you're having to say, like, man, this sounds good. I still don't know where to start. I know you said you started in single family homes, that's where I started too. And you find out really, really quickly, like, that can be a nightmare from time to time. But where would you suggest people start? Would you suggest people start with what you're talking about with storage facilities?
So I'm a syndication operator. So this can be as passive as you want. It's obviously it's on a scale of more active, more passive. I'm a deal junkie. I love it. I'm an extrovert and I'm passionate about what we're doing. So at least for the foreseeable future, this is what I'm doing, and I'm doing it actively as a job. But there are a ton of different operators with different assets and different geography, and you can invest in anything from vineyards to RV parks converted into tiny home villages to hotels to car washes to self-storage and apartments. Every time you drive by a big apartment complex, Very rarely is that an individual who owns that, right? It's a syndication of people that have pooled money together. So if you don't know where to start, that just implies a level of ambiguity. Ambiguity is a lack of education. And these days, education is free. We can network and connect with people in a much more meaningful way than we've ever been able to do in the history of the planet. So the most important thing for me is don't listen to this and be like, ooh, self-storage sounds good. Let's go do that. That's working backwards, in my opinion. If you don't have it clearly defined, your first job, I think, is to sit down with your spouse or your partner and write out a list of like, how old am I? You know, and write the next 10 years. When I'm 40, when I'm 50, when I'm 60, when I'm 70, like, what kind of relationship with my spouse do I want to have? What kind of relationship with my kids do I want to have? What kind of, financial situation do I want to be in? What kind of health do I want to have? What kind of time and location independence want I have? Right? You write up the goals and then put that to a timeline. That's going to dictate the type of decisions that you need to make to try to get where you want to be, right? So start working from the goal backwards and then let that steer you to how active do I want to be? Do I want to just be a limited partner is what it's called and passively invest with a general partner? And ultimately you need to know these three things. It takes three things to have success in real estate investing. It's time, experience, and money, right? If you don't have time right now, it's going to be hard for you to get experience. You still have to have those three things. So sometimes the best option is for take what you do have, which for most people in their professional life around this age is typically money, right? And if you can partner that with someone else whose profession it is to use their time and experience to operate the business plan appropriately, there's a good chance that it might be a good idea for you to find an operator that you know, like, and trust in an asset class that you understand because you've educated yourself on it, and pick someone that you can partner with a goal over time of diversifying that across different assets, different geography, different operators, paying out in different time cycles and using different debt structures, making sure you're not all exposed with variable rate or floating debt, things like that. That's the simplified version of you can put your money in the stock market and it's going to go up and it's going to go down. Or you can put your money into real estate deals with a solid operator with a business plan of maximizing the net operating income. And you can find deals that are going to sell every 3 to 5 years, and you go find another deal. You can find more that are more legacy plays. Some are going to have a little higher risk profile with a higher return. Some are going to be safe and stable, and you can do triple net industrial buildings that's going to have a 20-year lease on it. I don't think syndication is right for everybody. And if someone's an active real estate investor flipping houses, they're probably going to you can go make 30, 35% returns. Go do that. You're going to make 20 to 24% with a syndication or somewhere in that range, 15 to 20%, whatever it may be, depending on the market. But I can tell you this, if you're a real estate agent or a medical sales rep, or you're flipping houses or you're wholesaling or whatever it may be, you are trading your time for money. There will be a day that if you stop working, you stop getting paid. And the idea is that throughout your life, you will get to the point where your time is worth more than anything else. And I think if we know that we will end up there, then it's about creating those goals for what you want your relationships and your life to look like, putting it to a timeline, working back from there, and let that dictate what your next action steps in terms of experience need to look like.
I agree. And I think there's a variety of guys as far as ages go that listen to this show. I would say anywhere from the guys who are 28 years old to 52 are the numbers that I see as far as our demographics go. If you are a 28-year-old guy, you don't have kids yet, or maybe you have one or something like that, the outlook that we're talking about here may or may not be the same, most likely not the same. Like a 28-year-old is wanting to grind, hustle, kill it, crush it, which is, I mean, hey, those are great traits. But I think over time, you are exactly right. Cause I mean, I'll be 50 next year. And I've been looking at my life for the past couple of years of like, okay, the most precious thing to me actually is not money. It's actually my time. And it's actually, I'm picking up what you're putting down as far as like, I don't need the nicest car, like, but I want incredible experiences with my kids and be able to do things when I want to be able to do them, how I want to be able to do them, and not to be working for someone and paying for somebody else's day off. Right. And that's what's most meaningful to me. And building that type of life, like I wish I would have had this type of experience when I was around 28, 30 years old. I would have built my life, I think, quite a bit differently. But I think when you're in the medical device, space, it's very glamorous. Like there's, if you got a job like that, it feels glamorous. Over time, you're like, wow, it's not so glamorous. Or if you're just, you have a job and you're just grinding, you're just absolutely grinding it out. There are better ways. There are absolutely better ways. You don't have to trade your time for money. If you were to go ahead.
One thing to add there, like there's this trajectory of what we see with people throughout their career, especially people investing or trying to save. And ultimately, like people are hustling and grinding, and eventually it's always the same ending. Those people get to the point where they would rather, even if they are investing in real estate like I am, they get to the point where they would rather make a little bit less and not have to do anything and break free. Where you are in your life right now, if you're 28 right now, you should probably not be investing into syndication. The number one thing you should do, in my opinion, is the average 28-year-old right now is spending about 30% of their income on their housing expense. The number one thing I think you should be doing, if that's your shape right now, is eliminating your housing expense by something called house hacking. You can find, my first property when I was 24 was a duplex. I lived in one half, rented out the other half, lived there for free. Thought I was a genius. It's been happening for 1,000 years. I didn't come up with it. I thought I did when I was a 24-year-old kid. But if you can buy a house that has an accessory dwelling unit or something like that, a triplex, a duplex, anything 4 units or less counts as still just a straight up residential property, and you can get the same mortgage there than you would get for a single family home. If you're in your 20s, I think your most important thing is eliminating your housing expense, because that's going to immediately give you a 30% raise. When was the last time you saw an employer give anybody a 30% raise? Right?
I haven't
Create
yet.
create
Yeah.
a value delta. Then with that money, decide what you want to do next. And like probably investing in getting your employee match on your retirement accounts is probably the next smartest thing, at least to hit that minimum. But just know this, you're 28, 35, whatever, 38. You will get to the point where your time is worth more than anything else. If you know that, passive strategies of investment that's going to beat the stock market is something that should be part of your tool belt. And it may not be right for you right now, but it's something that you should know about.
When you say totally passive, are you talking about like something like storage units where, you're not dealing with tenants? Is that passive, or are you talking about just the revenue in and of itself? It doesn't take active work to create it.
Yeah, you have the general partners that operate self-storage or that operate apartments or whatever it may be. We have limited partners that do the work up front of building a relationship with us, understanding the deals and what they're doing. After that, they put money into the deal. It's a 19 to 22% IRR, comes out to around a 21 to 24% annualized rate of return over a 10-year period. Their involvement beyond that point is they can choose to read the monthly updates and the quarterly financials or not, or just get the quarterly cash flow distributions after the properties are cash flowing. Your involvement can be as much as you want. It's not we joke about truly passive income. The reality is there's no such thing. You still have to do some work, even if it's building a relationship up front, knowing what your goals are so you can see if theirs align with yours. But beyond the point of putting the money in, you can stay as involved as you want. From that point on, it's going to call it passive income or call it residual income because you front loaded the work on that. That's
Got
the
it.
idea, is that it can be an active asset class, but if you are a limited partner investor, you are trusting a general partner to operate the business plan, and you are just the capital partner. You're sitting back and watching.
Got it. Okay. What has this done for your family? Like you spending time with your wife and your boys compared to what life was like before?
So the day that my first son was born, I did 3 surgeries that day. When my wife was pregnant with our second, I left medical sales to be a full-time real estate investor. And when a second was born, stayed home for, I don't know, 3 weeks, I think. And then like I'm taking them to school every morning. I'm picking them up. My 5-year-old starting jiu-jitsu this afternoon. Um,
That's
it
great.
changed everything for us. Now, my youngest is 18 months, right? So we've done some travel, but it's tough. It's tough with a baby. When he was 3 months old, my wife and I and our 3.5, 4-year-old at the time, and our 3-month old got on a friend of mine. We live in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, which is a little beach town on a small island. And we helped our neighbor take his 65-foot yacht from Wilmington up to Stone Harbor, New Jersey. It's a 3-week trip up there, just working our way all the way up. Like I never would have been able to do that. Like this is with a new baby and a toddler, basically, um, and able to do a trip like that. And obviously, we have ambitions of doing a lot more things like that, right? I want a couple months. I love what I do, but a lot of it can be done remotely or can wait in between offerings. And our goal is probably 2026 to start taking, 2.5, 3 months off a year, and you know, Costa Rica, Europe, Switzerland, whatever, like Iceland, like bounce around. Again, like I don't want to just leave my boys money. I think it's important to do that in the right setting, in a trust that comes with a family constitution that is more focused on character than anything else, and a legacy play that money's going to continue to live on. But if I just give them money, like we said, it's likely that it doesn't take long. The money's gone and they're bad people, at least a generation or two later. My goal is to create a legacy with proper preparation and assets that are continuing to play forward. But my main concern is that we live in not the nicest beach town, but I grew up, lower middle class, one of 6 kids, and in a fairly poor environment. These kids are exposed to way more wealth than I ever thought we would see. And I don't want to raise a couple little jerks, right? So how do I avoid that, right? Number one is by having more time available to spend with them, and hopefully I'm not the best dad. I'm an impatient person a lot of times, right? But my job is to try to get better at that and hopefully be a positive impact on them and the people around us and our church and our community and everything else. But how do I protect them against being raised in an environment where people do have so much and having jealousy over that? In my mind, the way that we do that is through travel, specifically travel to underprivileged areas and areas that are going to give them a sense of empathy and gratitude, right? That understand that you should be very grateful for where we live as a country, not just is our town, but like it needs to come with a sense of empathy for people around us and understand the situations that other people have and look for ways that you can give into that in a positive way. And I think for us that comes, we're going to use the time that we have created for the purposes of travel, specifically with a hope of building some character.
I love that, man. Um, I love the fact that you are not just planning on like leaving them like, a truckload of money. It's tied to to a to a vision of their character, like the person that they're going to become. Can you talk a little bit more about that, what that looks like?
So I actually just finished reading a book that I think can do a better job of summing it up than I can. It's called "What Would the Rockefellers Do," and it goes back and looks about the Vanderbilts had this unbelievable fortune, hundreds of millions of dollars in the 1800s, which is equivalent of billions today, and 3 generations later, uh, the first one died broke. Right? They had 10 huge mansions in Manhattan, one which was the largest home that had ever been built. 100 years later, they'd all been torn down. The money's gone. Right? Versus the Rockefellers, which set things up with a trust and a family constitution based around character and things like that. And they obviously continue to have a legacy that continues to go on. I think just trying to have a vision of like, look at our generation. I got my first cell phone when I was probably sophomore, junior in high school, the Nokia brick phone. Fast forward now, everybody's
Yeah.
got a smartphone. This generation has seen a way to connect with people and network greater than anything we've ever seen. My fear is that the next generation is going to have so much noise and have always been exposed to that they may not realize how special that is. For our generation, you and I are talking right now, we never would have had a chance to meet if it wasn't for the way things have gone. Because of that, I feel like right now we have an opportunity to create value and a financial trajectory for our families unlike the world has ever seen. I think that if I don't have success in my lifetime, given the opportunity that we have, that's a me problem. Along with that comes the responsibility of not acting like new money, right? Is putting a legacy in place that is, they're going to be provided for and taken care of, but understand that money is not the goal. Money is it needs to be the byproduct of the family structure that we put together to try to make sure that we're being, giving and charitable members of society that hopefully have decent character. And again, like if I just give them money 3 generations later, it's all gone, right? If we try to put a structure together where we're raising good men or women, I think it has a better chance of dictating how happy our great-great-grandchildren are long after I'm gone. And I've learned the value of taking on projects that are a slower project with a significantly larger payoff in the long run, and having that vision of just zooming out. Like in the grand scheme of things, we're all just a blip in how long, life has gone on and is going to go on. And I think if we're willing to zoom out and look at what do we want this to look like, a lot farther down the road, I think that we can make decisions now that, there's going to be a time when I'm gone, and it could be sooner than I think. I don't know, but what kind of men and women are we producing, and how do we make the right kind of people where they have the opportunity to try to be good people and then have the time to impart character to the next generation and try to pass it on, right? That's the best thing that we can do. I think it's really the only thing we can do.
I agree with you, man. I love the fact that you're doing this. You're building a business around your life, not the other way around. And I think so many of us do the opposite. We build a life around whatever we do for a living, or whatever whatever our career is, our business. But I love working with men who have this mentality of like, no, no, no. Yeah, I can make a lot of money. Yeah, sure. But that's not really what I'm interested in. What I'm really interested in is building a business and a mission and a purpose around my life, not the other way around to chase dollars. And I love the fact that you're doing this. Um, if listeners want to connect with you, or if do you do any type of coaching by chance on like how to do this, or do you just mostly, gather together people who have capital, and then you raise capital, and then people are a part of your deals? How does it work?
So I don't do paid coaching, but I don't think you should have to pay for that. But I'm always happy to connect. I do, shameless plug, I do co-host a podcast called the Truly Passive Income Podcast, mainly because when I want to learn about something, I want to find an expert and give them a platform so that I can ask them questions selfishly, right? But I also want to have recordings of my voice available for our family. And so I have that podcast. Besides that, our website is nomadcapital.us, or people can email me, Clint at nomadcapital.us. I'm a natural extrovert. I host a monthly alternative investing mastermind meetup here locally, because I know that who I am right now is the same person I was 10 years ago, or going to be 10 years from now, with the exception of the places I go, the people I meet, and the content that I consume. And so I'm always happy to connect, help anyone I can. And no, you shouldn't pay for coaches or gurus unless you know exactly what the goals are for your family and you think it's going to save you time. But I'm always happy to connect and share our journey.
Gotcha, man. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on. Um, just a shameless plug to put in your ear. If you run across, like I would love to see some of these deals you're working on. If you gather together investors for these storage facilities and that kind of thing, like I'd really, really, really be keen on working with you in the future if you ever think that it would be a fit.
Cool, man. That's great. Yeah, like the main thing for us is that, like, it requires patience. These are development deals and we are developers. So my thing is, like, my job is not to sell our deals. My job is to educate both on the asset class and on what our core values and beliefs are. And if it fits in well with what you're looking for, that's great. Let's talk about it. And if not, that's fine too. Because ultimately, if you're frustrated about things 3 or 4 years in, I'm the one that's got to take the phone call anyway. Right. So, like, we want to make sure that we're people understanding that we're building a tribe of real estate nomads. But yeah, I'm wrapping up a $10 million fund right now. I'm happy to share it with you. I think you and I have a lot to connect on. I was really excited to do this podcast because I think so much of it is just like shouting into the void to raise capital or scream what you're doing. And I think that there's a lot more things more important. Obviously, our deals are creating a lot of value for our families, but there are a lot of things more important than that. And I think I could tell immediately that that was going to be the focus of your podcast. So I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm really not interested in hanging out or interviewing someone who's rich, who doesn't have their family as the priority. Like I'm just not, because there's plenty of those people walking the earth. Like, listen, if you want to go out, like I didn't know this 10 years ago, but I know it now. If you want to go out and make millions of dollars, it's not that hard. It's actually not that hard at all. I used to think, I was like, that's impossible. Then you start talking to people who, like yourself, who and other people are like, well, how did you do this? And then it's just like, wow, it's a lot simpler than I thought. It just wasn't on the reason it was impossible was because that's exactly how I labeled it. It's impossible. I'm not even going to look into it. It's not even a possibility. Then you're like, well, what if it is a possibility? How does this work? And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I could actually do this. But there are so many entrepreneurs out there, there's so many business owners out there that have built empires and piles of money that they'll even never use. Like they don't even have a lifetime to use it all in, but they do not have any type of connection or relationships under their own roof. And that's not the people that I like to associate with. The people that I like to associate with are the ones that are like, no, I am building this so that I can create this amazing connection with my wife and my kids and these memories. And I want to be able to have the freedom to choose what we do and to have conversations that we otherwise wouldn't, to be at every single practice, to be at every football game or baseball game or little league game, every birthday, every anniversary. That's not what I'm leaving on the table. And those are the guys like yourself, man. That's like, yeah, it's great to make all that money, but why are you doing it? And you're doing it for the exact reason. Like you could have stayed in device sales and lived a killer lucrative life, but you would also have to sacrifice a lot. And I love the fact that you made that. I think you making this choice is brave, because I know how lucrative the medical device industry is. Like when I first broke away from medical device sales fully in 2021, like you want to know what my biggest fear was? It wasn't that we were not gonna make it. I knew we were, because I had built this mission and organization along the way, and I knew we're good. We're fine. It was my in-laws.
Yeah.
I thought my mother-in-law would have been like, you're you you're quitting your job. That's my daughter you're married to. Those are my grandsons. Like, how in the world are you going to make ends meet? Are you crazy? What's wrong with you? Like, I literally thought they were going to like put me in a mental institution.
It's
And
hard to get people to understand that. It's
it
scary.
is, especially when the perception is this is safe.
Yeah.
And this is what I really want to flip on somebody's head. Like, all my ducks, when I was in medical device sales, were wrapped up in my job. If I would have lost my job, I would have lost my livelihood, which it's like we wouldn't think to invest. Like, one thing a financial planner will tell you is like, don't invest all of your money in one stock. Never do that. It will decimate you if it doesn't work out. Well, that's what we do in our 9 to 5s. Like, if our entire livelihood is based on what a company decides to pay us and we lose that job, then what? Right?
Wow.
It actually isn't so safe when you really think about it. It's terrifying.
I love the way that you put that. It cuts straight through it, right? It cuts right to the core of it. And the saddest thing is when I talk to people that have had that wild success that you're talking about, uh, and they're to the point now, like especially some older investors and like their sons are my age and they're on drugs or in and out of jail, or like they've just turned into morally bankrupt individuals. And it's like, at what cost? Like, what, you got all the money in the world. I've got one person in particular sold their company for $100 million, and they can't trust their kids with any of it. I'm like, at what cost? Like, what do you, what's the point? Like, what's the money even for? It's going to go to some endowment or college or something like that, because if you give it to your kids, you'll kill them. Like, that's the thing, is like, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Like, having success or having a family that you're hopefully turning into great people does not have to be mutually exclusive.
I
And
agree.
it's the difference between listening, instead of listening to the opportunity you have in your life and pursuing whatever's going to make the most money, you really can clearly define what those goals are for your life and prioritize it top to bottom. What's the most important thing? And you can use that to make the decisions for you. And that it does not have to be mutually exclusive.
I agree. You can actually have it all. You just have to be strategic about it. Clint, can I ask you a question I've never been able to ask on I shouldn't say I've never been able to. I've never thought of asking this question, but I'd love to put you on the spot and ask you a two-part question.
Sure. Go for it.
Okay. You're going to be 42, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Happy early birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, Here's the question. It's two parts. So you're going to give me two answers. And I would really like for you to think about your life right now, knocking on the doorstep of almost 42 years old, and you're not in real estate. You have no storage facilities. You never even entered it. You're still in medical device sales, selling pacemakers. And that's your life right now. Okay. And I want you to imagine your life 20 years from today. So you're 62, your 5-year-old's 25, your 18-month-old is just turned 21, going on 22. You and your wife been married for 20 more years. And I want you to think about what's happened over the past 20 years in your life that maybe it's the things you didn't really want or plan on, right? And maybe it was just, but it seemed right. It seems right because it's your 9 to 5. It's safe. I'm making good money, right? We're good. That's the first thing is like, what have we left on the table and what are we missing with that life, even though it's lucrative? The second part of the question is this. I want you to think about your life now and what's going on and what you're building. And I want you to think about your life 20 years from now, 62 years old. You got a 25-year-old, a 21-year-old, been married for 20 more years. And you're looking back on the past 20 years and they look different. And how are they different? And why is one more meaningful than the other?
This is a great question. And here's where I go with it. If I know that at that point in my life, the metric that's most important is time, then I would use that as the measuring stick. So assuming both of my boys leave the house when they're 18, that means I get 13 more years with my 5-year-old. And it means I get 16 and a half more years with my 18-month-old. So with that lifestyle, I was probably good. You got multiple weeks of vacation every year, but you can't take it because your business suffers and your physicians want you, right? You're their guy. You've earned the business and you're in there. So even though you may get the time off, I'm taking a week, maybe a week and a half a year. Okay. So call that, a week and it probably is literally just a week. So 7 days, seven days, Sunday to Sunday or whatever, taking a vacation Saturday to Sunday. And I get one of those a year or 13 more years with my 5-year-old and 16 and a half more years with the other ones. Okay. So that's, on the high side, that's like 110, 120, 130 days that I get to spend creating meaningful life with him, assuming I don't have to have my phone on me during that time frame. Okay. And I have the ability to do it now, but it is hard to travel with, an 18-month-old. But starting in 2026, I'm telling you, our general partners are going to take, maybe don't tell all our investors this yet, but we're going to shut it down. Like the construction teams keep working, the acquisition teams keep working, but we're probably taking 90 days off a summer to travel and the phones are off unless we have important meetings that we need to zoom in for. And I get to do that for 13 more years. Okay. So that's what, almost 1,200 days versus 120 days. It's 90% more time with my children. And we all know that once your kids turn 18 and leave the house, they say that you've spent 90% of the time with them in their lives that you're going to. The rest of the time is going to be, Thanksgiving, holidays, and a couple times throughout the year, especially if they don't live close, right? So like mine's probably going to be different. Because of the amount of time we're having the years, I'm probably going to spend 99% of my time with my boys before they leave the house. because we're going to have months every year to go, you know, chase fish in the Amazon River or whatever it may be. So if we know that time is the most important thing, that's the measuring stick. And if it 10x's the amount of time that I get to try to have an impact on their life, that has to have some kind of significant multiplier as to what kind of relationship they're going to have with their sons and their grandsons, and hopefully that they have with their grandsons. So I think to give it just one metric, it's 10x. It's 10x, right? How do you put a value on that in terms of money? Like just money? Are you kidding me? Think about the stack of pictures. What does that stack of pictures look like that I'm trying to die with if I have 10 times more time? It's a 10 times stack of pictures. That's a lot of pictures, man. That's a lot of memories. It's a lot of stories. That's a lot of things to translate.
I'm having a hard time responding to this because it hit me hard, man. Like I look at, I don't know if you've what are your boys' names?
Fisher and Finn. We live on an island.
Killer names, by the way. Fisher and Finn get to see something that's really cool. And here's why I say what I'm about to say. I say this because we as dads, we look at the world through the first person, right? We look at the world through our eyes. Like, do I want to make this decision to leave medical device sales? Is it crazy? Is it stupid? I want to go build my own thing. You know, I want to be able to have freedom of time. I want to be able to have freedom of purpose. All these things. It sounds great through my eyes, right? But here's the cool thing that Fisher and Finn get to see. They get to see their dad step into his dreams, take a really gnarly risk, see their dad be brave, which inspires them to be like, holy crap, like, look what dad did, right? Not to mention the fact that they get to reap the benefits of dad making a very solid decision, challenging the status quo, staring at the man right in the eyes and saying, you know what? Not on my watch. I'm going to do something different here while the rest of you guys go do this thing. And they get to create a relationship with you that they would dream of, right? I know you know what I'm talking about when you go to those medical device dinners with your boss and all the coworkers, and everybody's at dinner, everybody's making truckloads of money, but you can see it and you can hear it in all the conversations with dinner. I can't even tell you how many guys I was sitting to my right or my left where they were like, oh, it's so great being out of town. I can't stand being at home. The wife drives me crazy. My kids this, my kids that, and like whatever. Like, this gives me such a good excuse to get away. And like, I remember sitting at the table and like, it was like the record would scratch because it actually, towards the end, it got to the point where I'm like, you guys are all so full of shit. Like, this is absolute bullshit. You're just telling all these corporate people what they want to hear. And it got up to the point where like I would say things sometimes. I'd be like, well, it's interesting you guys feel that way because I'd rather be home. And they'd be like, what? I'd be like, I travel 40 weeks out of the year. Like, I miss birthdays. I miss anniversaries. Like, I don't want to miss. I hate missing that stuff. And you could tell like the other people were just like quiet about it, right? I don't know if they were thinking the same thing or looking down on me for saying it. I don't really care, but that's what I felt. And what I'll tell you is this, man, I might not have like the medical device paycheck, right? Which I'll walk away from that all day long, because what's really got me excited, which I think has probably got you really excited, is like, I don't spend those times away from my house anymore. I don't miss birthdays. I don't miss family dinners. And we've got such a great connected family. And I couldn't always say this, but we do now. And I've got a great marriage. I can say that now. I didn't before. But I will tell you, being on the other side of it, if anybody were to ever ask me, was it worth it? Like, you leaving that cush job with an expense account and a car and also, was it worth it? And there's zero hesitation in my voice. I would have done it earlier. I waited too long to actually do it, to actually pull the trigger. I should have done it 3 to 5 years earlier than I did, but I didn't. That's the only regret I have. And I can sense from you, you feel that exact same way. Like there's not a dollar out there that you would say yes to over time with your kids.
I still get offered job. I got offered, a job last 2 weeks ago, and it's funny. The offers keep going higher and higher and higher. It's
Higher,
like
right?
luring me back in, and my doctors are the ones telling the companies to hire me, and I'm like for example, like I'm in North Carolina. It's 3:47. We're gonna have to cut this short a little bit because I'm taking my 5-year-old to his first
Yeah.
jujitsu class, right?
Yeah.
And like we're probably gonna do that a couple times this week. And he turned 5 a couple weeks ago, and we took 3 days during the week, and we went and we caught redfish, and then I took him on a dove shoot. And no, there's for money, you're gonna, I'm gonna trade away the best years of my life paying for somebody else's days off for money. It's gonna have to be something better than that, right?
I
So
agree. Which brings me to the end of the show because you're going to get your kid to jujitsu
I am.
in like 60 seconds here. So I just want to make sure, where can the guys find you if they want to connect with you? Any resources that you might have, we want to put them in the show notes.
Yeah, hear me fumble along on the Truly Passive Income podcast. Besides that, nomadcapital.us, you can schedule a call there. You can reach out to me directly, Clint at nomadcapital.us. I'm always happy to connect and yeah, help any way I can. And whether that's Airbnbs or storage, or you want to do it yourself, or you want to learn more about syndication, I'll help any way I can or give you any resources I have.
Got it. I love it, man. Well, guys, we won't have to look far for that. He said it twice now, right? But that's all right. All you have to remember is one thing: thedadedge.com/Friday 179. Thedadedge.com/Friday 179 for this show. You'll be able to connect with Clint. You'll see all those links in the show notes and everything we talked about today. Clint, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much. I will be in Wilmington on April 12th, just so you know, but we're going to be
All right.
hosting, yeah, we're going to be hosting a rite of passage for fathers and sons.
Very
Um,
cool.
yeah, when Fisher and Finn are of the ages of 11 and 17, look me up. We'll take you through a killer thing in your backyard that will really get you guys connected. But we're doing that this year on April the 12th. So yeah, guys, stay tuned for that. I'll be talking about that as time goes on. But thank you so much for coming on, man. This was awesome. And this last 10 minutes, dude, you hit me in the heart, man. Like I felt myself like getting a little misty eyed. Not gonna lie, I was like, man, what an incredible gift and what an incredible brave what an incredible brave move you made in your life. And good on you for doing it.
It's great to connect with you, man. I was listening to your podcast earlier today and subscribed. You already got a new fan before we started this episode because I do a lot of these, but it's not often you can we really get into it, right? Like let's
Yeah.
just cut down to what's really important in life. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that, man. Great to connect with you.
Back at you, man. And hey, have fun at that. I hope your little guy enjoys his first jujitsu class. It's warning. I don't know if you ever done it, but if you ever decide to step into that, it's a little addicting. I just started 5 weeks ago. I
Oh,
love it.
really?
Yeah, I love
I've
it.
been
I just
dancing
love it.
around it for years. Now that has potential to be a father and son thing, maybe
Yeah.
maybe they'll loop me in this time. We'll know here in a couple hours.
I'll tell you what, man, jujitsu places for guys like me and you, they not only teach you some skills, but they serve you up a nice slice of warm, humble pie when they choke you out. All right, man. Thanks so much for coming on.